Within the walls of a courtroom, worlds collide, and both the felons and their punishers come face to face as the law takes effect over the most disturbing cases. Judges tasked with delivering the adequate verdict for the hardened criminals often find themselves in precarious situations as these unrepentant convicts launch brutal attacks in a fit of rage. Join us as we unveil disturbing footage of convicts attacking the judge in court. Melissa Hardwick, on July 14, 2011, appeared in a Kentucky courtroom to stand trial for a domestic violence charge filed by her estranged husband. But what started as a simple open and shut case took a whole new dimension after Hardwick launched an attack on Judge Edwards. Surveillance video of the entire incident shows Hardwick's husband explaining his reasons for filing the order. However, while he was speaking, Hardwick interrupted and refused to stop talking, despite receiving several warnings from the judge. This went on for several minutes as Judge Edwards tried to restore order in the courtroom, but Hardwick was determined to have her say, and so she refused to comply. As punishment for her disorderly conduct, the judge held her in contempt of court and slammed her with a 10-day sentence. It was at this moment that Hardwick decided to take matters into her own hands. Out of nowhere, she lunged across the bench to attack Judge Edwards before 3 security officers were able to take her down. It was a dramatic display no one saw coming, and unfortunately for Hardwick, this was only going to make things worse. While the judge herself was not hurt in the process, Hardwick suffered facial scratches as officers tried to bring her under control. According to court security officer Adam Dodson, who helped to restrain the rogue woman, cases like this occur on extremely rare occasions because it's never a good idea to attack the one person in charge of their fate. Unfazed by the threat to her life, Judge Edwards continued the proceeding, sentencing Hardwick to an extra 120 days in jail for contempt of court. She also faced a few extra charges, including third-degree terroristic threatening, intimidating a participant in a legal process, as well as resisting arrest. Bond was set at $225,000, and Judge Edwards ruled that the domestic violence order filed by the husband would remain. The case was then handed over to another judge as Hardwick's fate hung in the balance. Standing before the Fayette County judge during his double murder hearing, Bass Webb looked formidable on the outside, his mind filled with raging thoughts of violence, the kind that brought him in contact with the law in the first place. Webb was on trial for killing his ex-girlfriend, Bria Rooney, and leaving her corpse in the Harrison County, Kentucky home along with her 2 young daughters. He pleaded not guilty, but that didn't mean he wasn't responsible for the murder. Webb himself had previously admitted to brutally ending the life of Bria Rooney right within the walls of her own home during investigations, before he drove to Bourbon County, where he took his criminal actions to a whole new level. While trying to escape from law enforcement, he attempted to run over 2 deputies outside the Bourbon County Detention Center, but failed. This resulted in a high-speed chase, which eventually ended after his car caught fire, giving the officers ample time to make an arrest. Immediately he was caught by the officers, Webb admitted to the murder, informing officers that he had wrapped his girlfriend's body in a blanket. However, this turned out to be the beginning of the massive drama after the case made it to court. Judge Vanessa Dixon decided to excuse herself from the whole debacle because she knew the 2 deputies Webb had tried to run over. But while Judge Dixon was explaining her reasons for transferring the case to another judge, Webb, who was standing in front of her at the time, spat at her. It was an unnecessary and unwarranted display of violence that didn't have to happen. Few moments later, Webb was dragged away from the courtroom by deputies with a fresh new charge of third-degree assault added to his case for the spitting incident. As his trial proceeded, the prosecution only summoned 4 witnesses, which was more than enough to convince the court that he was guilty of all the charges against him. Webb would later reveal to the new judge over the case, Kimberly Bunnell, that he did not wish to testify in his defense and wasn't willing to produce any witnesses from his end as well. In a normal trial, the case would proceed to the penalty phase, but the 33-year-old decided it was best to waive his rights to that phase so he could plead guilty to another charge of felony assault in the first degree. With this guilty plea, his 5-year sentence for the assault was increased to 10 years, in addition to a 15-year sentence for trying to run the corrections officer over and a 50-year sentence for the murder of Bria Rooney. Added to these crimes, he also had other felony convictions for wanton endangerment and theft by unlawful taking in Menifee County. But since the law forbade him from spending more than 70 years in prison, this would go relatively unpunished. In another spitting case, a jury consisting of 8 women and 4 men found Webb guilty of spitting in the face of another corrections officer named Roy Compton while he was detained at the Fayette County Detention Center on February 2, 2011. The incident took place while the officer was searching his cell for contraband, after it came to light that the man may have actually broken compact discs so he could use the sharp edge as a weapon. Surprisingly, no such contraband was found after the search, though Webb turned and spat on Officer Compton, landing him in even more trouble. In addition to these wild jail shenanigans, Webb was also accused of murdering another former girlfriend, identified as Sabrina Marie Vaughn, who disappeared in 2003, only to be found dead in 2010. But while Webb managed to piss off the whole justice system with his depraved behavior, the next convict put up a display that no one can really explain.
For 26 years, Joseph Zeeler, a child killer, managed to escape from the consequences of his actions, hiding away from the law until 2016, when he was eventually linked to the crime and arrested by authorities. It was in May 1990 when Zeeler sexually assaulted and murdered 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her 32-year-old babysitter Lisa Story inside a Cape Coral apartment in Florida. Jan Cornell, Robin's mother, who had gone to stay at her boyfriend's home for the night, hired Story to take care of her daughter while she was gone. But sadly, she returned the next day to find her daughter and the sitter assaulted and suffocated to death. The front door was locked, but the back sliding door was left slightly open, and in an upstairs bathroom, she found her daughter's lifeless body lying face down. This was the beginning of a highly publicized case that threw the whole community into mourning as the crime went unsolved for years. The case was also featured in America's Most Wanted in 2010, spreading the horrid story further in an attempt to locate the killer. But Zeeler continued to evade justice year after year, and at some point it felt like he would never be caught. But justice could only be delayed, as in September 2016, police were able to announce that a suspect had finally been connected to the infamous murder, after police were able to match his DNA to traces found at the crime scene. As the case went to trial, old wounds were opened, and the world watched on in anticipation of the day the sadistic killer would receive the well-deserved punishment for his horrible crimes. The defense team also noted that the attack on Cornell and Story was personal, alleging that Zeeler had a vendetta against Jan, the baby's mother, for premeditated murder. The death penalty seemed to be the only appropriate punishment, and after the jury declared him guilty in May 2023, everyone knew what was coming next. But being locked away behind bars awaiting sentencing didn't stop Zeeler from harassing Jan Cornell, whom he sent a letter to from prison. Over the course of his trial, he had also engaged in disgusting behavior, displaying an unrepentant attitude, hurling insults at Jan, flipping the bird at the camera, and behaving so erratically during testimony that the judge had to remove the jurors from the courtroom for their safety at some point during the hearing. Zeeler even asked for the cameras in the room to be taken down before throwing abusive language around and continuing his erratic behavior. However, Zeeler's most memorable shenanigans was displayed just before his sentencing, when he tricked his attorney, Kevin Shirley, into a side conversation before elbowing him in the face. Seeing how the situation could quickly escalate, 3 bailiffs came to the attorney's rescue, tackling the man to the ground within seconds. Lee Circuit Judge Robert Branning then asked Shirley if he was okay, to which the attorney responded that he had taken harder hits before. Zeeler was kept out of the courtroom for several minutes while Shirley was checked to ensure he was okay, before the convicted felon was then brought back to receive his sentence. Jan also watched in shock as the incident played out, and as the man was brought back into the courtroom, he could be seen growling at the judge and the people present in the court, exposing the word "killer" etched on his teeth. Despite his violent display, though, he continued to claim innocence of the crimes, stating that he had nothing to do with this, while his defense team tried to file a motion for a new trial. Judge Branning ruled against this and decided not to overturn his conviction. Several hours later, he was sentenced to death and is currently on death row awaiting his execution.
On January 3, 2024, 30-year-old Diablo Redden appeared before a Nevada judge during an assault trial, but ended up making the situation worse after he attacked the judge unprovoked. His crimes take us back to April 18, 2023, when a 911 call was made from a residence located near Lake Mead Boulevard and MLK Boulevard, reporting that a man was seen swinging a baseball bat at his brother-in-law. As officers arrived on the scene, they made contact with the unidentified man and Redden, the alleged suspect. The man told investigators that he was initially calling 911 to report that his vehicle had been stolen before Redden approached and began swinging a baseball bat at him, thinking he was calling the police on him. He also claimed that Redden had verbally threatened to harm him while swinging the bat before the police finally arrived. Redden was arrested and his case went to trial, but just before his sentencing, he decided to kick things up into high gear by leaping over the table and attacking Judge Mary Kay Holtis. The entire courtroom erupted in chaos as Redden punched the judge and pulled out parts of her hair. The scuffle also left a marshal with serious forehead injuries, requiring 25 stitches, as well as a dislocated shoulder. Several eyewitnesses who were inside the courtroom at the time of the incident also mentioned how Redden was yelling obscenities towards the judge as he struck her multiple times. Two officers also described how they heard Redden uttering and that he had a bad day and tried to kill the judge today. Speaking after the assault, the judge described him as big, strong, and angry, while describing how he knocked her over her chair and struck her one time in the head with a hard, unidentified object. For the attack, Redden was forced to face additional charges, including battery by prisoner, probationer, or parolee, and battery on a protected person, among a host of other charges. Redden, whose rap sheet was as long as can be with several prior arrests, would later be tried by another judge on the fresh new charges. As he was brought back into the courtroom, Redden could be seen wearing a spit mask with more restraints than he had last time for the first battery case. He was ordered to serve 19 months to 4 years in prison. In his defense, his legal team claimed he was suffering from severe mental health challenges, especially paranoid schizophrenia. This only did little to sway the justice system in his favor. In addition to the 30 months prison term he faced for his initial battery charge, Redden was also slammed with an extra 48 months for the unprovoked attack.